My name is Alaric Voss. For 4 weeks I worked the night security shift at an old mansion on the north shore of Lake Superior in Minnesota. I am not going to tell you which rule on that list mattered the most. Not yet. If you have ever driven past a big, dark estate at night and wondered what actually happens behind those windows once the last visitor's car pulls out of the lot, you already understand more of this than you think you do. Before that job, I thought private security meant sitting in a warm room watching for kids who wanted to climb a fence on a dare, or somebody trying to walk off with a piece of art. I thought the worst thing that could happen to me on a night shift was calling the police about a broken window. The paper my supervisor handed me on my first night was not about protecting the building from people outside it. It was about keeping me alive until sunrise. There were 8 rules typed on that laminated card, and every single one of them existed because somebody, at some point, had needed it to exist. I found that out before the sun came up even once. By the end of that first night, I understood why the guard who worked there before me only came up in conversation one time, and why the woman who trained me did not want to say his name twice. 3 weeks before that first shift, I was sitting in my truck in the parking lot of a manufacturing plant outside Cloquet, Minnesota, reading a termination letter from a company I had given 6 years of my life to. The line had been automated down to half its old size, and I was part of the half that did not survive the change. My checking account was already negative by the time my last paycheck cleared, and my landlord had stopped accepting promises about the 15th of the month. I found the next job the same way I found most work that year, scrolling through postings on my phone with coffee going cold on the dashboard. Allied Universal had a listing for a temporary night post, 4 weeks, private historic estate, $18 an hour, with a small furnished residence included for the length of the contract. $18 an hour was more than the plant had ever paid me, and free housing meant one less bill while I figured out my next move. I called the branch office that same morning and had an interview that same afternoon. The interview was short. A man behind a desk asked if I had a clean record, if I could work alone for long stretches without getting bored or spooked, and if I was comfortable living on site for the length of the contract. He did not ask about my experience with alarm panels or my availability for other days of the week. He asked if I was the kind of person who followed instructions exactly as given, without needing a reason attached to them. I told him yes, because I needed the $18 an hour more than I needed to ask why that question mattered. He shook my hand, told me someone named Eliana Schultz would meet me on site, and that was the entire hiring process. I drove out to the estate 2 nights later. The property was called Wrenhollow Manor, built in the early 1900s by a lumber and shipping magnate named Edmund Ashford, and it had been run for decades as a museum by a small non-profit called the Wrenhollow Heritage Society. During the day, it was open to tourists who wanted to see how a wealthy Minnesota family had lived 100 years ago. At night, apparently, it needed somebody like me. I arrived at 10:20 at night, later than I planned because of construction on the highway. A woman was waiting by the side entrance with her arms crossed, a flashlight clipped to her belt, and an expression that told me she had already decided what kind of person I was before I said a word. She introduced herself as Eliana Schultz, the night security supervisor, and told me to bring my bag inside before we did anything else. The inside of the manor smelled like old wood and furniture polish. Eliana walked fast, and she did not slow down to let me look at any of the rooms we passed. She led me down a narrow hallway on the ground floor to a door marked staff only, and inside was the security office, a small room with 12 monitors mounted on the wall in 3 rows of 4, a logbook open on a metal desk, and a locked cabinet of keys behind her chair. "This is where you will spend most of your night," she said. 12 cameras cover the ground floor, the second-floor hallways, the exterior doors, and the grounds immediately around the house. You will log the time at the start and end of every patrol round, and you will log anything unusual the moment it happens, not after your shift ends. She opened a drawer and pulled out a small card, then closed the drawer again without giving me the card yet. "There is a 6-digit code for the side entrance and the interior fire doors," she said. "I am going to tell it to you once. You will not write it down anywhere, not in your phone, not on paper, not anywhere. You will remember it the way you remember your own birthday." She said the 6 numbers slowly, made me repeat them back twice, and watched my face while I did it, like she was checking whether I actually understood the number or was just parroting it back to satisfy her. "Good," she said, "now the rules." She handed me the laminated card. 8 lines numbered, printed in plain black text with no explanation attached to any of them. "Always follow the designated patrol route. Never deviate, even by a few feet. Do not enter the 3rd-floor hallway under any circumstance. If you hear footsteps above you, ignore them. Do not investigate. The basement door must remain locked at all times. Do not respond to knocking that comes from inside the building. If a door you locked is found open, lock it again and log it. Do not investigate further. Remain in the security room between patrol rounds. If you see a figure in white clothing on any camera monitor, do not go to that area. I read it twice, waiting for her to laugh, or to explain that this was some kind of orientation joke every new hire got put through. She did not laugh. I need you to understand something before your first round tonight, she said. This is not a formality. This is not a liability waiver dressed up as a checklist. People who follow these 8 rules finish their contract and go home. People who do not follow them get hurt or they go missing and they do not come back. I am not saying that to scare you into being a good employee. I am saying it because it is true and because I would rather you believe me now than find out later. I asked her what would happen if I broke one by accident, without meaning to. She looked at me for a long moment before she answered. Then you do exactly what Rule 6 says. You lock it again, you log it, and you do not go looking for an explanation. The manor does not punish mistakes made in good faith as long as you correct them fast enough. It only punishes curiosity. She walked me through a handful of things that were not on the card but mattered just as much, in her words. The 2-way radio clipped to my belt was for emergencies only, and if I ever needed to actually reach her for something real, I was to use the desk phone in the security office, not the radio. There was a small staff restroom next to the security office, and I was to use that one only, never the public restrooms upstairs, even if it was closer. I was never, under any circumstance, to fall asleep during my shift, no matter how quiet the night got. Then she took me on a walk through the building before my first patrol. We went through the ground floor first, a dining room preserved with the original table setting, a library with 2 full walls of books, a sitting room with furniture roped off from visitors during the day. On the second floor, she showed me the bedrooms that had belonged to the Ashford family, and then she stopped at the base of a narrow staircase leading up. "3rd floor," she said, nodding toward it. "That's closed, has been for a while. Officially, it's a structural concern. The floor joists need reinforcement before we can let anyone up there again, staff included. You do not go up those stairs for any reason. Not to check on a sound, not to grab something you think you left there, not for anything." We went back down to the ground floor, through the kitchen, to a heavy wooden door at the end of a service corridor. "Basement," she said. "Same as the 3rd floor. You keep that door locked, always. If you ever find it open, you lock it again immediately and you log it, and you do not go down those stairs to look around first." By the time the tour ended, it was nearly midnight, later than I expected for a walkthrough, and my first patrol was supposed to start soon. She walked me out to the carriage house behind the main building, a small converted residence with a bed, a kitchenette, and a bathroom, where I would be sleeping during the days for the length of my contract. Before she left me there to get settled, I noticed an older logbook sitting on a shelf near the door, the leather cover worn soft at the corners. I picked it up out of curiosity and flipped it open. The handwriting inside was not Eliana's. It was someone else's, careful and even in the early entries, then slowly getting looser, more rushed, the letters starting to shake in the later pages. I did not recognize the name signed at the bottom of each entry. Eliana saw me holding it and took it gently from my hands. "That's not yours to worry about tonight," she said, and set it back on the shelf, facing the spine away from me this time. "Get some rest before your first round. I'll see you in the security office at midnight." The first rule on the card was simple. Always follow the designated patrol route, never deviate, even by a few feet. Eliana had walked me through the route earlier, a specific path through the ground floor and 2nd floor that touched every hallway, every exterior door, and looped back through the security office every 45 minutes. At midnight, I sat down at the desk, opened the logbook, and wrote the time. Eliana checked the entry, nodded once, and told me she would be reachable by desk phone if I needed anything, then left me alone in the security office for my first solo round. The manor at night was quiet in a way that felt heavier than ordinary quiet. Every door I checked was locked exactly the way it should have been. I walked the route slowly, checking each handle, knotting each empty hallway in my head, and nothing about the first hour gave me any reason to think about the 8 rules at all. I almost started to relax. Halfway through my second round, walking down the 2nd floor hallway toward the east wing, I heard a small sound off to my left, past the edge of the route, like something light tapping against glass. It was faint, and it was coming from a hallway that branched off the one I was supposed to be walking. For a second, I actually turned my head that direction and took half a step off my line before I caught myself. I stood there a moment, weighing whether checking it would really cost me anything. It felt harmless, a window rattling in the wind maybe, nothing that should matter enough to break a rule over. My eyes were heavy too, tired in a way that made cutting the corner feel almost reasonable, like skipping 10 feet of hallway would not hurt anyone. I thought about the small staff bathroom by the security office and how close I actually was to the public one upstairs instead, and how easy it would be to just use that one instead since it was right there. I did not do either. I stepped back onto the route, finished the hallway the way it was laid out on the map Eliana gave me, and walked all the way back to the staff bathroom near the security office instead of the closer one upstairs. I logged the sound exactly as I heard it, nothing more, nothing less, and noted that I stayed en route the entire time. When I got back to the security office, the desk phone rang. It was Eliana, checking in on schedule. "Anything?" she asked. "Heard something off the route in the East Wing hallway. Didn't investigate, logged it." There was a short pause on the line. "Good," she said. "That's exactly right." Then she hung up without asking anything else about it, like the sound itself did not matter half as much as the fact that I had not gone looking for it. The seventh rule on the card said to remain in the security office between patrol rounds. I had assumed that one was mostly about efficiency, keeping an eye on the 12 monitors instead of leaving them unwatched. I found out around 2 in the morning that it meant something closer to survival. I was sitting at the desk, watching the monitors cycle through their views, when the radio clipped to my belt crackled to life. A voice came through that sounded exactly like Eliana, urgent in a way I had not heard from her all night. "Alaric, I need you at the east service door right now. The alarm's about to trip on it, some kind of sensor fault. You've got about 5 minutes before it goes off and brings half the county out here. Use the code, get it open, and reset it from the panel inside." My hand was already on the arm of the chair, halfway to standing, running through the 6-digit code in my head, ready to move. Then something caught in my thinking. Eliana had told me clearly on my very first night that the radio was for emergencies only, and that if she needed to reach me for something real, she would use the desk phone. This was coming through the radio. I sat back down, picked up the desk phone instead, and dialed her extension. She answered on the second ring, her voice calm, nothing like the urgency I had just heard. "Everything okay?" she asked. "I just got a call on the radio," I said. "Said it was you. Said there was an alarm about to trip on the east service door, and I needed to get out there right now." Another pause, longer this time. "I didn't call you on the radio," she said. "I haven't touched a radio all night. Stay exactly where you are. Do not go to that door." I stayed at the desk. My hands were not steady for a few minutes after that call, but I stayed exactly where the 7th rule told me to stay, watching the monitors, waiting for the next scheduled round instead of moving early. Nothing came through the radio again that night. When Eliana called back a little later to check on the next round, she said one thing about it before moving on to the schedule. "The radio is for listening," she said, "not for taking orders." The 4th rule on the card said the basement door had to remain locked at all times. Nothing about the wording explained why, and until that night, I had not needed it to. Around 1 in the morning, on my 3rd full round, I came down the service corridor toward the kitchen and found the basement door standing open about 6 inches. A thin dark gap where I was certain, completely certain, that I had checked it locked less than an hour before. From somewhere below, faint and irregular, I could hear a dripping sound like water landing on stone. I did exactly what the 6th rule told me to do. I stepped forward, pulled the door shut, and turned the key until it caught. My hand was not steady doing it. I logged the time and the exact detail of what I found, then picked up the desk phone and called Eliana, since finding a locked door open on my first night felt like something she needed to know immediately, not just something to note and forget. She answered fast, and when I told her what I had found, she was quiet for a few seconds before she spoke again, and when she did, her voice had changed. Less clipped, more careful. "I'm going to tell you something now that I don't usually tell new hires this early," she said. "You need to hear it, because I think you just came closer to a mistake than you realize." She told me about a man named Dale Simmons, who had worked the night shift at Wrenhollow years before I ever applied. Dale had been good at the job, careful, exactly the kind of person who followed instructions without needing a reason. One night, on a round much like mine, he heard a small sound from behind the basement door, something like a young animal, maybe a raccoon that had gotten trapped down there through a gap somewhere. He figured the rule about the locked door was only there because of the old stairs, worn and uneven, a liability issue, and nothing more. He told himself he was doing the right thing by checking on a trapped animal, instead of leaving it to suffer. He unlocked the door, took his flashlight, and went down. His log entry from that night described going down the stairs, finding the space at the bottom flooded with wet footprints leading further into the basement, though there was no plumbing issue and no standing water anywhere near enough to explain fresh, wet prints on dry stone. The entry stopped mid-sentence. Eliana told me that when the day shift arrived that morning, The only thing they found at the foot of the basement stairs was Dale's employee badge, sitting alone on the bottom step. Dale himself was never found, not that week, not that year, not since. I stood there at the newly locked basement door while she told me this, and for a moment, an urge rose up in me that I still cannot fully explain. I need to prove to myself that nothing was actually behind that door, that the whole story was just something meant to scare new employees straight. My hand actually moved to the key again, fingers wrapping around it, ready to turn it the other way. I stopped myself before I turned it. I let go of the key, stepped back from the door, and finished writing my log entry standing several feet away from it instead. "The door stays locked," Eliana said. Before she hung up, because Dale already opened it once for all of us, it doesn't need opening a second time. The sixth rule on the card said that if a door I had locked was found open, I was to lock it again and log it, without investigating further. After the basement, I understood exactly why that instruction existed, but the manor was not finished testing it that night. Walking the second floor hallway a little after 1:30, I passed beneath the door to the attic stairwell, a narrow door set into the ceiling line near the far end of the hall, locked at the start of my shift along with everything else on the third floor level. As I walked under it, the thin line of darkness at its edge flashed open into a wider black gap for less than a second, then snapped shut again, fast enough that if I had blinked I would have missed it entirely. A moment later, a thin line of light moved beneath the same door, sliding slowly from one side to the other, though there was no possible source for light behind a door that led only to a sealed, unused attic space. Somewhere down the hall, an old brass servant call bell, mounted on the wall as a museum piece from the Ashford era, rang once, a short, sharp note, then went completely silent. I stood there for a few seconds, staring at the attic door, feeling the pull to open it and see what had caused the flash of black, or to trace the light to whatever was making it. I did not do either. I checked that the door was still locked, which it was, wrote down exactly what I had seen and heard, the flash, the light, the bell, and moved on with the rest of my route. It took a full minute standing in the hallway after that before my hands were steady enough to hold the pen properly for the log entry. I wrote it anyway, in careful, complete sentences, the same way I imagined Dale might have written his early entries before things went wrong for him. The third rule on the card told me that if I heard footsteps above me, I was to ignore them and not investigate. I had assumed, reading it my first night, that this meant something rare, an occasional creak from an old house settling. Sitting in the security office a little before 2 in the morning, I learned it meant something much more specific. Footsteps started slow and even directly above the ceiling of the security office, a room with no occupied space above it, according to the floor plan Eliana had shown me. They moved back and forth, steady, unhurried, the pace of someone packing a hallway in thought rather than someone searching for anything. I checked the monitor covering that section of the second floor. Nothing moved on the screen. No shadow, no shift in light, nothing that should have accompanied the sound I was hearing directly overhead. The packing continued for several minutes. I sat perfectly still at the desk, staring at the monitor, forcing myself not to look up at the ceiling, not to call out, not to move toward the door. Every part of me wanted to shout something, anything, just to break the sound with a reaction. I kept my mouth shut and my eyes on the screen instead. The footsteps stopped exactly at the moment I felt like I could not stay silent through one more pass of them. After they stopped, the silence that followed felt heavier than the sound had been, stretching out for what felt like far longer than it probably was. I wrote in the log only what the rule required. Footsteps heard directly above security office. No visual confirmation on monitor. Did not investigate. I did not write anything about how close I had come to breaking that silence myself. The second rule on the card said not to enter the third floor hallway under any circumstance. Eliana had already shown me the closed staircase on our first walkthrough, explaining it as an ongoing structural concern. At the base of those stairs a little after 2 in the morning, I understood there was more to it than loose floor joists. I came around the corner of the second floor hallway on my scheduled round and saw a figure standing at the top of the stairwell leading to the third floor, dressed in a blazer similar to the uniform museum staff wore during the day, standing perfectly still, facing down toward where I stood. Its face, even from that distance, looked wrong in a way I could not fully explain in the moment, too smooth, too flat, without the small shifts a real face makes even at rest. I had already put one foot on the first step before I fully registered what I was looking at. My hand had come up instinctively, flashlight aimed toward the figure to get a better look. I stopped there, foot still on the step, light still raised. I lowered the flashlight, stepped back down off the stair, and turned away from the stairwell entirely, walking the rest of my route without looking back toward it again. I logged what I had seen in plain terms: figure at the top of the third floor stairwell, blazer-style clothing, did not approach, continued route. A few minutes after I finished writing that entry, the desk phone rang. It was Aliana, and she had not called for a scheduled check-in this time. "I need to tell you something new," she said, "and I need you to remember it for the rest of the night, and honestly, for the rest of your contract." "Okay. Whatever happens tonight, do not call the police. Do not call 911. I don't care how bad it looks or how certain you are that you need outside help. The manor reacts badly to people who show up here without understanding the rules, and once that happens, it becomes worse for everyone inside, not better. If something happens that you think requires outside help, you call me first, every time, no exceptions." I asked her carefully what exactly she meant by reacts badly. She did not answer that part directly. "Just remember it," she said, "please." The 8th rule on the card told me that if I ever saw a figure in white clothing on any camera monitor, I was not to go to that area. Aliana had mentioned, in passing during my first walkthrough, that this had happened to guards before me, always with the same instruction attached: never approach. At exactly 2 in the morning, on the monitor covering the main hall, I saw it. A figure dressed in plain white clothing, standing motionless near the center of the room, facing the camera directly, though nothing about its posture suggested it could actually see through the lens. I made the decision immediately not to go anywhere near the main hall. The moment I made that decision, everything else in the building seemed to happen at once. The desk phone started ringing, over and over. No one on the other end when I picked it up, only silence, followed by a dial tone, followed by ringing again seconds later. Somewhere on the ground floor, I heard the distinct sound of a door handle turning, metal against metal, the particular creak of the French doors near the library that I had checked locked less than an hour before. Then came the footsteps, dozens of them by the sound of it, moving across the main hall floor in a rhythm that suggested a crowd of people walking together, while the monitor covering that exact room showed nothing but the single motionless white figure and empty floor around it. I kept moving through my permitted route instead of freezing in the security office, checking each door on my path, and writing the word clear in the log after each one, over and over, a habit I fell into without deciding to, just to keep my hand moving and my mind anchored to something concrete. At the front entrance, I found fresh, wet footprints on the floor, leading in from outside, though the ground outside had been dry all night, and nothing about the weather explained standing water anywhere on the property. Through the glass of the front door, the view that should have shown the driveway and the tree line beyond it had changed entirely, replaced by a flat, still expanse of water stretching out into darkness, despite the fact that the manor did not sit anywhere close enough to the lake for that view to be physically possible. A figure appeared just beyond the glass, close enough that I could see it clearly, holding up a laminated employee badge toward me, the kind every staff member at Wrenhollow carried, except its arm was bent at the elbow in a direction no human arm could bend without breaking. My hand had already pulled my personal phone from my pocket, thumb hovering over the screen, ready to dial for help, any help, police, anyone. Aliana's words from earlier came back to me clearly in that moment, the warning about never calling outside help, about the manor reacting badly to people who did not understand its rules. I put the phone away, stepped back from the front door, and held my position exactly where the rules told me to stand, refusing to approach the main hall, refusing to open the door, refusing to call anyone but her. At exactly 2:30, all of it stopped, the ringing phone went silent, the footsteps ended, the view through the glass returned to the ordinary driveway and tree line. When I checked the main hall monitor again, it was empty. I called Aliana on the desk phone the moment I trusted my hands to hold it steady. She listened to everything without interrupting, and when I finished, she gave me an explanation for the first time that night that went beyond a rule and its consequence. Wrenhollow wasn't just a family home, she said. Ashford made a lot of his money moving goods up and down the lake, and not everything that came through on those boats was properly declared or properly paid for. Some of what happened here back then never made it into any official record. What you're dealing with tonight is what's left over from that. It doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from somewhere very specific, even if none of us can point to the exact moment it started. The 5th rule on the card told me never to respond to knocking that came from inside the building. Until nearly 6 in the morning, nothing had tested that one directly. The manor had gone quiet again after 2:30, quiet in the ordinary way this time, not the heavy kind from earlier in the night. I finished my 3, 4, and 5 o'clock rounds without incident, every door locked the way it should be, every hallway empty the way it looked on the monitors. Sitting in the security office a little before 6, I heard 3 knocks against the inside of the security office door itself, evenly spaced, exactly 10 seconds apart between each one. The door led to the hallway I had walked dozens of times that night. Nothing about the knock itself sounded aggressive or urgent. It sounded almost polite, patient, like someone waiting courteously for an answer. I did not answer it. Every instinct in me wanted to ask who was there, or to open the door and see for myself, if only to end the uncertainty. I sat still instead, hands flat on the desk, and let the silence after the third knock stretch out until it faded into the ordinary quiet of early morning. When Eliana arrived to check on me shortly after, I told her about the knocking. She nodded slowly, like she had been expecting exactly that detail from me before the night was through. That's the most important rule on the whole card, she said. More than any of the others, whatever lives in this house has never once opened a door on its own, not that we know of. It always asks first. It knocks or it calls out in a voice it's borrowed from somebody you trust, and it waits to see if you'll answer. The moment somebody answers, even once, it learns that it can be let in again. That's the whole secret to surviving this place. Nothing in Wrenhollow Manor is ever completely safe. The rules are just what get a person through the night anyway. The rest of the morning passed without anything else happening. Jensen, the day shift guard, arrived a few minutes before 6, letting himself in through the side entrance with the easy familiarity of someone who had done it hundreds of times before. He was a heavyset guy in his 30s, friendly in a low-key way, and he asked how my first night had gone before I had even finished logging my final round. I gave him the short version, mostly the parts about the rules and how strange it had all felt. He laughed, not unkindly, and told me his own history with the place. "I've quit this job 3 times, he said. Walked out, told myself I was never coming back, took other work for a few months each time. Ended up back here every single time. I can't fully explain why. There's something about this place that pulls you back once you've been here a while, even after everything you've seen. I'm not saying that to scare you off. I'm saying it because it's true and you deserve to know it going in." Eliana came to find me before I headed out to the carriage house to sleep for the day. She offered, plainly and without pressure, to see if she could get me transferred to a different property under the Heritage Society if I wanted out after this contract ended. She mentioned, a little less certain than her usual tone, that a couple of the other historic properties the Society managed in the region had similar arrangements with their own night staff, though she did not go into detail about what that meant exactly. I thought about my rent, my empty bank account, and the $18 an hour that had already covered more of my bills in 1 week than the plant job had in a month. I thought about the fact that I had survived my first night, that I understood the rules now in a way I had not 12 hours earlier, and that understanding them felt like something closer to control than I had expected it to. I told her I wanted to stay and finish the 4 weeks. She nodded like she had expected that answer too. "Just remember," she said, "this job was never about stopping somebody from breaking in. It's about following 8 rules well enough that you get to leave every morning the way you arrived." If you ever find yourself working a night job in an old building somewhere, and somebody hands you a list of rules that do not come with explanations attached, follow every one of them exactly as written, even the ones that feel small enough to ignore. I finished that contract, and I am still working there now, months later, still logging my rounds every 45 minutes, still refusing to look up when I hear footsteps overhead. Every so often, usually close to 6 in the morning, I still hear 3 knocks against a door, spaced exactly 10 seconds apart. I have never answered them. I do not plan to start now.